I never imagined that betrayal could still find me at 71. You would think that by this age, life would have taught you all its cruel lessons, that heartbreak would have become an old wound you learned to live with. But no, life has a funny way of saving its sharpest knives for when you least expect them. My name is Eleanor Hart. I'm 71 years old, and until last year, I believed I had lived through every kind of pain a woman could endure. I had lost my husband to cancer. I had lost friends to time. I had lost years to loneliness. But I never thought I would lose my own son. Not like this. Not because he chose to walk away. Not because he decided I was no longer useful. And certainly not because he betrayed me in a way I never saw coming. For most of my life, my son, Daniel, was my pride. I raised him alone after my husband died. I worked 2 jobs, skipped meals so he could eat, sold my jewelry to pay for his university tuition, and moved into a smaller home so he could have a better life. He succeeded. Became wealthy. Respected. A man people admired. But somewhere along the way, success climbed into his veins and poisoned him. And I? I was still the old woman who packed him lunches and hugged him too tightly at the airport. He started calling less. Then visiting less. Then slowly, I became a shadow he stepped over when it inconvenienced him. But the real betrayal, the one that shattered me, came last winter. It was November 12th. I remember because the air had the kind of cold that carries memories in it. I had just returned from my doctor's appointment. Arthritis had been creeping deeper into my joints, some mornings I struggled just to stand. Yet I never asked anybody for help. Especially not my son. Daniel called me that afternoon. His voice was unusually warm, like honey mixed with something sharp. "Mom," he said, "I'm sending you a lawyer. I need you to sign a small document. Just paperwork. Nothing concerning." I worried instantly. "Are you in trouble?" "No, Mom. Trust me." Trust. I should have known that word was a warning. 2 hours later, a sleek black car pulled up in front of my small house. A man stepped out, holding a briefcase and wearing a suit more expensive than all my furniture combined. "Mrs. Hart," he said politely. "I represent your son." He handed me a stack of papers and pointed where to sign, so many places that my hands began shaking. "What is this?" I asked, confused. "Power of attorney," he said casually. "Your son wants to make sure your finances are managed properly as you age." I stared at him. "My finances? I don't have finances." "Oh, you do," he said. "Your property. Your retirement funds. Your savings." My stomach twisted. Why would my son need control? He smiled stiffly. "Because he wants to help." Help. That word hurt more than trust. I told the man I needed time. He left politely, but his eyes carried impatience, as if I were delaying the real owner of my life. That evening, Daniel showed up in person. Not with flowers. Not with food. Not to see how I was feeling after the doctor. He came with the same papers. "Mom," he said, sitting across from me at my tiny kitchen table. "Sign them. Please. It's for your safety." "My safety?" I repeated. "Or your convenience?" He flinched. A small, guilty flicker in his eyes, but it vanished quickly. "I'm busy, Mom. I don't have time to argue. Just sign." Busy. He had time for luxury vacations and flashy parties. But not for the woman who had spent 27 years breaking her back to raise him. I held the pen, but I didn't sign. Something inside me whispered that danger was wrapped inside those pages. "Daniel," I said quietly, "look at me. Why do you want this?" His jaw tightened. "Because you're getting old." The words hit me like a slap. "And when old people make mistakes," he said sharply, "they become burdens." Burden. There it was. The real truth. He didn't want to protect me. He wanted control. He wanted my house. He wanted my bank account. He wanted everything he felt entitled to because I had sacrificed everything for him. Daniel, I whispered, I'm still your mother. He sighed, annoyed. Exactly. And I need to take responsibility before things get complicated. Complicated? Like putting his own mother in a retirement facility so he could sell her house? My heart cracked. Without warning, he raised his voice. Mom, stop being difficult. Nobody is trying to hurt you. But that was a lie. The kind of lie that comes out easily when someone no longer sees you as human. I slid the papers back to him. I won't sign, I said. For the first time, Daniel didn't hide his anger. His face hardened into something cold and unfamiliar. Fine, he snapped. Don't say I didn't try. He grabbed the papers, stormed out, and slammed the door so hard the frame shook. That slam. That was the moment our relationship shattered. For days, he didn't call. For weeks, I waited. For months, I wondered if I had just lost my only child. Loneliness returned like an old ache. But there was something else too, something surprising. Strength. A quiet, painful strength I didn't know still lived inside me. I began attending local senior meetups. I joined a poetry writing group. I started walking every morning around the lake near my home. And for the first time in my life, I met people who didn't see me as someone fading, but someone beginning again. And this is where the most unexpected part of my story begins. Because right when I thought I had been broken for good, I met someone who would teach me that happiness doesn't end at 71. Sometimes, it begins there. Lena helped me to the sofa like I was made of thin glass. I wasn't. But in that moment, my heart certainly was. She sat across from me, her eyes full of the kind of empathy only people who've seen too much carry in their faces. Mrs. Grace, she began softly, I know this is overwhelming. But I need to explain what your son has filed. I nodded. My hands trembled in my lap. I clasped them tightly, hoping the shaking belonged to the air and not me. She opened her notebook. Your son applied for medical guardianship. If approved, he gains full control over your healthcare, finances, and property. I swallowed hard. But why would he do that? I'm not sick. I'm not confused. I'm just alone, Lena finished gently. And sometimes lonely seniors are easy targets for family members who want control. The word targets made my chest tighten. I whispered, but he's my son. Lena sighed. I know. And that makes it hurt even more. She explained the entire process, hearings, medical evaluations, court reviews. Daniel claimed I was forgetful, confused, disoriented. He said I left the stove on, misplaced medications, wandered outside at night, all lies. Fabricated stories to paint me as incompetent. I stared at the wall. My wedding photo hung there, my husband smiling proudly, Daniel as a boy in my arms. A perfect memory from a life that now felt like a different existence. What can I do? I finally whispered. That's why I'm here, she said. To help you fight this. Her confidence steadied me. A small spark, tiny but real, lit inside my chest. Mrs. Grace, can you think of any reason why your son might want this guardianship? I hesitated. Then I told her everything. The birthday silence. The real estate broker. The plans to sell the house. The pressure to move into assisted living. When I finished, Lena sat back slowly. That's it, she murmured. You're home. That seems to be the motive. Motive. The word usually belongs in crime shows, not family conversations. But she was right. Daniel wasn't trying to help me, he was trying to erase me from my own life. Lena pulled out a few more papers. The good news is, you can fight this. But you'll need evidence that you're capable, independent, and mentally sound. I can do that, I said, straighter than before. I didn't feel strong. But I pretended, and sometimes pretending is enough to move the world. Lena smiled. I believe you. I'll schedule an evaluation with a neutral doctor. Not one your son picked. Neutral doctor. Another reminder that Daniel had planned this for longer than I ever knew. Before leaving, Lena wrote her number on a card and pressed it into my hand. Call me if he comes back or if you get more threats. I nodded, holding the card like a lifeline. As soon as she left, the silence felt sharper. The house echoed. The ticking clock sounded like footsteps approaching. I walked to the kitchen, touched the counters, opened cabinets. I wasn't confused. I wasn't forgetful. I wasn't broken. But my son was trying to make the world believe I was. I sat at the table and stared at my wedding ring, not the original one I sold for Daniel's textbooks, but a simple gold band my husband bought years later when things got better. He had held my hand that day and said, "This one represents not the beginning, but everything we survived." And now I sat alone, fighting a new kind of survival. That evening, Daniel came back. He didn't knock gently. He pounded like someone who already believed he owned the door. When I opened it, his eyes were cold, colder than I'd ever seen. "Mom," he said sharply. "We need to talk." I stepped aside reluctantly. He walked in like a landlord inspecting property. "Why is a social worker contacting me?" he demanded. So Lena had already reached him. "Because you lied," I said quietly. His face reddened. "I didn't lie. I told the court what's true." "You told them I'm unfit." "You are unfit," he shouted. "You live alone in a house too big for you. You forget things." "I forget birthdays." I snapped. It slipped out before I could stop it. Daniel froze. "I see," he said with bitter calm. "This is about your birthday. You're being dramatic." "It's not about my birthday," I whispered. "It's about you trying to take my home." He looked away. That told me everything. "Daniel," I said, voice trembling, "why? Why would you hurt me like this?" He didn't meet my eyes. Instead, he walked to the dining room and placed a stack of papers on the table. "Just sign the transfer agreement," he said. "I'll handle everything else." I didn't touch the papers. "What happened to you?" I asked softly. He flinched. For one small, fleeting second. I saw guilt in his eyes. Then it disappeared. "You're old," he said. "You don't need this house anymore." "We do." "We." Meaning him and his wife. I looked at my son, the boy I held, fed, protected, fought for, and suddenly I felt like I was staring at a stranger. "No," I said firmly. "I won't sign anything." His expression turned dark. "Then I'll let the court decide." He stormed out, slamming the door so hard the frame shook. I stood there long after the echo faded, my breath thin, my body cold, my heart almost hollow. But something inside me refused to break. The next morning, Lena returned for a welfare check. She brought muffins. I hadn't eaten much in days. "Mrs. Grace, I want you to meet someone," she said. Behind her walked in a man around my age, tall, with soft brown eyes and a neatly kept beard. "This is Mr. Carter," Lena introduced. "He's a volunteer advocate. He helps seniors in guardianship cases." He smiled gently. "Please, call me Henry." He shook my hand. His grip was warm, steadying, like holding a railing after stumbling. He sat with us as Lena went over the next steps. Medical evaluation. Home assessment. Court hearing. Paper proof of my independence. "I'll help gather everything," Henry said. His voice had a kindness I hadn't heard in years. I didn't know it then, but this man, this stranger, would become someone who would change the course of my life. For the first time in weeks, I felt the faintest sense of hope. But Daniel wasn't done. That evening, as the sun dipped behind the trees, my phone buzzed. A message from him. "You're making a mistake. You will lose. I'll make sure of it." I stared at the screen. Fear creeped up my spine. But then I remembered Lena's calm words. Henry's supportive hand. My husband's wedding ring. And I typed back. "Do what you must. So will I." I put down the phone and looked around my house. My house. My memories. My life. Daniel wanted to take everything. But he forgot one thing. At 71, I had nothing left to lose. Except my dignity. And I would fight for that with every breath I had. Lena scheduled my medical evaluation for the following Wednesday. I spent the days leading up to it in a haze of anxiety, half floating through my own home like a stranger, touching the walls, the furniture, the doorknobs, wondering if this was the last week I'd live here. Every creak of the floorboards felt like a countdown. But Henry came every afternoon. Sometimes he brought groceries, sometimes fresh flowers, sometimes nothing but company. He never made me feel like a burden. He never treated me like a fragile old woman. "I read about your garden in Lena's notes," he said one day. "Mind showing me?" I took him outside, and he admired every rose bush and lavender cluster like they belonged in a botanical exhibit. His appreciation made me feel seen. Not for what I'd lost, not for my age, not for how vulnerable I was, but for who I still was. "You've taken care of this place for decades," he said. "It shows." I felt a sting in my eyes at the simple kindness. "My son thinks I can't take care of myself." Henry gave me a steady look. "Your son is wrong." I wanted to believe him. The evaluation day came. The doctor, an independent assessor, visited my home. He was in his 50s, polite, methodical. He asked me questions. "What day is it? Who is the president? Count backward from 100 by sevens. Recite a list of words. Explain how I manage my bills." He checked my mobility, balance, medications, pantry supplies, safety habits, and overall awareness. I passed every test. When he left, he whispered, "You're sharper than I am. You'll be fine." I laughed, a small, shaky laugh. But it was real. Lena was thrilled when I told her. That's exactly what we needed. But I knew Daniel would not be thrilled. And I was right. That evening, he arrived unannounced again. This time he didn't knock, he barged in, using the old key I gave him years ago. "Mom, we need to talk." His tone was cold, clipped. I frowned. "Daniel, you can't just enter." "Cut it," he snapped. "I heard you passed the medical exam." Of course he did. He probably called the assessor pretending to be my guardian. "Yes," I said firmly, "because I'm fine." He scoffed. "You manipulated it. You always have some way of making things go your way." "Daniel," I whispered, "I've never manipulated anything in my life." He paced the living room, running a hand over his hair. "Do you know how stressful this has been? How much paperwork, how much pressure Sarah and I are under because you refuse to cooperate?" Cooperate. That word stung more than any insult. "I'm not an obstacle," I said. "I'm your mother." He stopped pacing. He looked at me with eyes I no longer recognized. "You're in my way," he said coldly. My breath caught. He continued, "Sarah is pregnant." The room tilted. Pregnant? A grandchild. My first. "Daniel," I whispered, that's wonderful." He nodded but didn't smile. "We need the house. We need space. And we can't take care of you and the baby at the same time." It's too much. I didn't ask you to take care of me. You will need it, he said sharply. Maybe not now. Maybe not for a few months. But soon enough. And I'm planning ahead. I stared at him. He didn't want to protect me. He wanted to eliminate future inconvenience. What about my life? I whispered. He looked away. We're due in 6 months, he said. I need you out by then. A deadline. Pregnancy as a countdown. I felt sick. Daniel, I whispered, your father. Dad isn't here, he snapped. I am. And I'm telling you what needs to happen. He stormed out before I could form another word. I felt a strange detachment as the door slammed behind him, like shock had wrapped my heart in cotton. A grandchild. A new life. And yet my own son couldn't make room for me in his. Henry found me sitting in the garden that evening. He had come to bring me documents Lena needed, but one look at me, and he knew something was wrong. I told him. Every word. He listened with the patience of a man who knew how fragile truth can feel. When I finished, he knelt beside my chair. Eleanor, he said gently, love doesn't justify cruelty. Your son's news should have been shared with joy. Instead, he used it as a weapon. I hadn't realized it until then. But yes, he used it to pressure me. I don't want to fight him, I whispered. He's all I have. Henry's voice softened even more. You have more than you realize. And you deserve relationships that give you respect, not fear. I didn't respond. The ache in my chest was too deep. The court hearing was scheduled for the following week. I spent every night restless, tossing between dread and heartbreak. Daniel didn't contact me again. On the morning of the hearing, Henry arrived to accompany me. I wore my best blouse and a coat my husband once loved on me. You look strong, Henry said. I feel terrified. That's how strength often starts. When we arrived at the courthouse, Daniel was already there, standing with his wife. She was pregnant indeed, maybe 4 months. She avoided my eyes. Daniel didn't. Mom, he said stiffly. I nodded. My throat had sealed shut. Inside the courtroom, the judge asked Daniel to present his case. He stood, clearing his throat dramatically. My mother is 71. She lives alone. She forgets things, mismanages medications, and neglects her safety. She almost burned the kitchen last year. That never happened, I whispered. He ignored me. He continued spinning lies. Painting me as frail, confused, unsafe. Every sentence stabbed a hole through my heart. Lena squeezed my hand. Henry's jaw tightened. When it was my turn, my voice trembled, but I spoke. I do not need guardianship. I cook, clean, bathe, shop, manage bills, and care for myself independently. I passed every medical evaluation. Lena presented the documents. Henry submitted photographs of my well-maintained home. The doctor's assessment was clear, fully independent, mentally sound. The judge reviewed everything, her expression unreadable. Then she said, Mr. Grace, based on the evidence, your petition is denied. Relief crashed through me so fast I nearly cried. But then she added, and I find no grounds to consider your mother incapacitated. Daniel stiffened. The judge continued, furthermore, given the concerning nature of your claims and your personal stake in your mother's property, I strongly advise legal counsel before filing any similar petitions. Daniel's face turned red with embarrassment, or was it anger? The case was dismissed. I was free. When we left the courtroom, Daniel followed me outside. This isn't over, he hissed. I stopped walking. Then I turned slowly, so slowly, until I faced him fully. It's over, I said, for you. He blinked. You lost more than a case today. You lost my trust. You lost my respect. And if you keep going like this. My voice broke. You'll lose me completely. He opened his mouth to respond, but Sarah tugged his sleeve. Daniel, she whispered softly, let's go. He left without another word. That night, Henry visited with dinner. Chicken soup. Fresh bread. Strawberries. He'll come around, Henry said gently. I shook my head. No. He won't. And I think I need to stop hoping for something he's no longer capable of giving. Henry placed a hand on mine. Warm. Steady. Kind. You survived the storm, he said. Now it's time to find the sun again. And for the first time in a long time, I felt like I could. I used to believe that life after 70 was just a long, slow walk toward the end. But now, as I stood in front of the community center, the winter sun warming my face, I realized something astonishing. Life had just begun for me. I took a slow breath, holding the small bouquet of white lilies I'd brought for my new friend, Clara. She was the reason I even dared to show my face in a place filled with strangers. She had said something to me a week ago that kept echoing in my heart. You're not done living. You've just been waiting for the right chapter. For 71 years, I had lived for others, my parents, my husband, and then my son. I had sacrificed my youth, my dreams, my voice. And when Adam betrayed me, it felt like the final blow, the moment that proved I was nothing more than a burden to the people I loved. But here I was, walking through the wide glass doors like a woman who finally understood her own worth. The warmth inside the center was comforting. People chatted, laughed, and greeted one another with familiarity. I wasn't used to this kind of openness. For most of my life, I had kept to myself, quiet and small. Clara spotted me first. There's my fearless lady, she called across the room. Fearless. No one had ever called me that before. She wore her usual colorful scarf and that radiant smile that made everyone feel like they belonged. I held out the lilies. For you. You said you liked lilies. Her eyes softened. You remembered. Of course, I said, feeling strangely proud of myself. We sat at a round table where the morning sunlight spilled across the wood. The art class was starting soon, but Clara always liked to sit with me beforehand. She said I brought her calm energy, though I never understood how someone so lively found comfort in someone like me. You're glowing today, she said. I laughed nervously. I'm not sure people my age glow. Nonsense, she said. You look like someone who has finally stopped apologizing for existing. Her words stung, because they were true. The letter. After the class, I returned home to find an envelope taped to my door. The handwriting froze my breath. Adam. For a long moment, I didn't move. My chest tightened, and I felt my hands tremble. I wasn't sure I was ready to hear from him, not after the cruel things he had said, not after the way he made me feel like a burden, a mistake, a leftover piece of his life. But I peeled the envelope off and slowly opened it. Mom, the letter began, I'm sorry. I sat down before my legs gave out. He wrote about his stress, his failing marriage, his mistakes, everything except the one truth I had wanted for so long. Why wasn't I worth kindness? He wrote that he felt guilty for the way he spoke to me, guilty for pushing me out of his home. He said he didn't know how to face me again. He talked about his shame, his confusion, even his fear. But not once did he ask how I survived the night he abandoned me. Not once did he ask if I was okay. Not once did he say he loved me. The words blurred in my vision. I folded the letter, placed it on the table, and sat there in silence. A year ago, his apology, even a shallow one, would have pulled me back into his gravity. A year ago, I would have run to him, begging to fix things, comforting him for hurting me. But not anymore. Not after everything I had lived through. Not after realizing that survival doesn't always come from forgiveness, sometimes it comes from finally letting go. And so, I whispered into the quiet room. I forgive you, but I will not return to who I was. The invitation. 2 weeks later, the community center hosted a winter gala. Clara practically dragged me there. You're part of this family now, she insisted, looping her arm through mine. Family. It had been so long since that word felt safe. The hall was filled with warm lights, soft music, and people dancing without shame or stiffness. I stayed near the edges at first, unsure of my place. Then a man approached me, a tall gentleman with kind hazel eyes. I recognized him from the art class. He always sat in the back, quietly painting. His name was William. You look lovely tonight, he said shyly. I nearly laughed. No one had said that to me in decades. Before I could respond, Clara appeared behind him, grinning like a mischievous child. Ask her, William. He cleared his throat. Would you like to dance? I hesitated, not because I didn't want to, but because a part of me still felt undeserving of simple joy. That same old voice whispered, you're too old, too tired, too broken. But then I remembered the night Adam rejected me. The night I cried alone. The night I thought my life had ended. And the woman I was now, the woman who survived it all, stood up. I'd love to, I said. William's smile was gentle, genuine. We walked onto the dance floor, and for the first time in years, someone held me with care instead of obligation. As the music wrapped around us, I felt something I hadn't felt in a very long time. Hope. Not the desperate hope of someone begging for love, but the peaceful hope of someone who finally chose herself. My second sunrise. Months passed, and my life slowly filled with new colors, new friendships, new joys. I wasn't lonely anymore. I wasn't invisible. I wasn't living in the shadow of my son's decisions. One morning, I sat on the balcony of my small apartment, wrapped in a warm shawl, watching the sunrise. The sky glowed orange and gold, as if the universe itself was painting a promise. I heard footsteps behind me. William stepped out, holding 2 cups of tea. Early morning again? I don't want to miss the light, I said. I've missed so much already. He handed me a cup. Not anymore. We stood there in comfortable silence. I thought about Adam, not with anger, but with understanding. We both had to grow. We both had to face our pain. Maybe one day we would heal enough to meet in the middle, or maybe not. Either way, I was no longer waiting for my son to give my life meaning. I had found meaning myself. At 71 years old, I had discovered something shocking and beautiful. Happiness isn't something that ends at a certain age. It's something you choose, again and again. And as the sun rose higher, warming my face, I whispered. This is my second sunrise. And I am ready.